Hello, welcome to the Hand Intelligence Lab. I don't know if that's what we're calling it, but that's what it is right now. So we have got a number of things to do today. Some moves that are going to push and pull the ability of your hands in many different directions. Things to do with pressure, balance, timing, and lightness. There's a number of cheeky bonuses snuck in. There's a book that gets introduced at some stage. But the bottom line is these are a load of moves that are going to really allow your hands to develop deeper abilities. Really, all of this is about mastering the object so that you can do bigger and better things. And these particular things are really going to push your hands in new directions. So get ready to sweat a bit and get ready to cry in pain with some of these hand intelligence moves. Now, we are going to kick off these hand intelligence moves with a classic, the Charlier cut. It looks something like this. This is a very, very simple move, an old school move, just for doing a single cut of the cards in the hands. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. There's one with a straight first finger and with a bent first finger. So I'll show you both of these. Basically, you hold this in the hand in a normal mechanics grip, and you're going to lift up on half of the deck with your thumb. And then this first finger here, you're just going to push up until it gets to about here. And then you're going to let go of that packet with the thumb. In fact, the finger's lower. Allow this to dip underneath, and that forefinger stays curled underneath. This was a famed cut by the famous magician Charlier, who used to use this as a secret pass. But this basically is the move like this. You can also do it by starting with the deck up at the fingertips up here, and instead of lifting, you actually drop the bottom half, which is effectively doing the same thing, and then you can do this like that. So, but I would suggest practicing this from the hand. The other thing that you can do is actually keep this forefinger straight. So you can actually push up like this and push up with a straight forefinger as you lower those other fingers down. It kind of has a more interesting, kind of smoother look to it. So you can either keep that finger straight or bent, or start with it up at the fingertips up here and drop that packet like that. So this is the basic Charlier cut, and one that is a old school classic technique. It's a one-handed technique, and it really allows you to develop the balance that you need and control that you need for many other types of moves. Just to be able to balance and hold packets in this way. When you first start learning, you'll feel there is no space anywhere, and you won't be able to move these packets around. It'll feel like there's just a spaghetti junction there, and there's no space at all. But over time, as the technique improves, you lift up with more lightness, you push up with lightness, and then these fingers here lower, getting out of the way, you start developing that necessarily control in the technique and in the hands. And over time, this becomes as easy as breathing. This is one of the easiest techniques that you can learn. But like I said, use the forefinger bent underneath to get that control, and use it with a straight finger. And maybe also start with it up at the fingertips and drop the packet, which is exactly the same technique. This is the Charlier cut, a classic hand intelligence move. Now here's another thing that you can do with the Charlier cut. This is actually a multiple Charlier cut like this, and you actually cut this multiple times in the hands here. Instead of just one cut, there's several cuts going on. Again, this is an old school technique, but nevertheless one that requires a number of bits of control and balance in the hand so that these don't drop anywhere. And this basically, you really kind of have to do this up the fingertips to start off with, or at least I find this easy to do. These go up to the fingertips like this, and you allow a small packet to drop. And what I like about this is that you have to develop the control in the thumb to be able to only drop a few. You lift up, and then you allow another packet to drop off. And another packet. Each time a packet is dropping off of that thumb, the left thumb there at the bottom, like this. It's a bit more tricky than it appears to be, but it's one of those moves that will really develop a sensitivity in the thumb and the hand, which is very, very useful. Of course, master the initial Charlier cut first before moving on to that multiple variation. Now, here is a very pretty looking cut, and this is known as the Revolution cut. This was the brainchild of Brian Tudor. It's a very, very beautiful looking cut here. It's effectively a Charlier with a spinning packet, and this is just a cut of the cards, but a packet is spinning. It almost feels like much more is going on. It just looks very, very, very beautiful and does require a different level of kind of balance and control in the hands, and you have to pivot things in slightly different ways. And after time, this will become as easy as habit. Now, what's happening here is we're going to lift up for the Charlier exactly as before, except this time I'm going to bring my first finger round the side. I don't want this underneath. I actually have it round the side supporting the top packet, and effectively all of my other fingers can come off here. It's only these two now that are supporting that. And what's going to happen is I'm going to start to twist my thumb downwards. And as a result, this packet will start to twist outwards. Okay, so if I lift up, this first finger comes around the side, I start twisting outwards like this. But as I do that, I'm going to put my third finger, I'm going to duck it underneath the packet there. So I'm actually going to duck it underneath that side. You can see from above that my third finger starts going underneath and all the way to the other side. And now I'm going to let go with the thumb, and so that packet can now spin. If I carry on moving my third finger outwards, it spins around, and that first finger is now curled underneath like in the original Charlier. So if we watch that in slow motion, the first finger goes around, that third finger starts dipping under the back, moving towards the thumb. It tries to clear and get that edge. You now open everything up, and it goes underneath. And this is a relatively fast cut because you're going to have that packet spinning like this. It's quite smooth. It looks very, very, very pretty, but also this is developing a nice sense of touch and timing in the hands. Obviously, all of these moves, if you look at cardistry, folk, and people that specialize in this type of card work, these moves can be done extraordinarily fast and done in multiple ways, but the basic idea of just this spinning is going to give you that extra level of hand intelligence, that extra level of touch and timing and control over the object. I'm not necessarily saying you would use any of these things in Magic or anything else, but they're going to give you that sense of control that's going to elevate your sleight of hand. So the Revolution cut. First master the Charlier, maybe also the multiple variation, and then you have this pretty variation. There's also another thing, I'm just going to chuck this in here, but remember we were also previously talking about this multiple Charlier. The last packet you can spin like that. So if we look at this here, I can do a multiple Charlier, and this last packet, I'm going to tuck that finger underneath almost like the Revolution cut there. I'm just going to bring it around and move that around. So there's many variations of these cuts. You have the basic Charlier, the multiple Charlier, and this Revolution cut. And what's interesting, if you start learning these things, your hand starts putting these pieces together like puzzle pieces. Once you start developing that hand intelligence, you'll start opening up the doors to many other techniques. But Revolution cut, it's a gorgeous one. This is an interesting one. This is the waterfall or cascade, ability to just lift the cards up and they kind of dribble or drop down like this. I don't have much height here, but we can just see these dropping down all in a line. Even though they're dropping from a height, they all kind of drop down. This is a really kind of nice little move. And again, this is about just developing that touch and timing, that hand intelligence to be able to execute this. And there's a number of little things in this that I think are interesting. First of all, you have to kind of learn to air the deck as part of this. If we look here, I'm basically coming over 4 fingers at the front, thumb at the end, and start pushing up a little bit with this finger, and it kind of starts airing the deck. You see that? I can squeeze on the front with the fingers like this, and I can start airing that deck. So even just this action alone is part of this skill set, really, the ability to maintain and manage control over this object. So just to be able to do that is something. Now, if you can do this airing of the deck, what it means is that you can suddenly also start allowing the cards to drop from the front. And if you kind of time that as you're airing and letting go of the deck, you can basically get them to almost drop singly, and they almost form a wall. So it means that they don't kind of all fall over the place or fall anywhere else. And there are some people that can get this move particularly high. This isn't something I practice to get extraordinarily high, but you can do that. I just think that just to have the ability just to get those cards to drop like that in the hand is a very, very useful one. In the same way that maybe dribbling cards or springing cards is, each of these different actions brings something else. And this cascade or waterfall action is definitely a feeling to get in the hands that isn't like the dribbling action, which is a pressure, or the kind of springing action, which is from the sides. This involves this airing action, which I really think is a useful skill to have. Now, this is a particularly beautiful hand intelligence move, something invented by Charlie Miller. It's a control. So in this case, imagine someone had the 7 of hearts. You give the cards a little kind of a cascade, a waterfall, and you control that to the top. Not great from this angle, but it doesn't matter. But the point is that this move contains a number of very interesting pressure points in the hand to manage it. You're having to not only do a kind of cascade or waterfall, but also control a card in the process. Now, I don't actually like this as a card control at all. In fact, I think it's a terrible card control, because I think at the very moment that you're doing a card control, you're suddenly doing a move here. I don't like it. But I do think in terms of hand intelligence, touch and feel, I think it develops a really nice touch and feel in the hands. So what's going on here? Well, and also, by the way, there's a lot of skills you have to do this particular move in a way. It doesn't mean it's any good out there in the real world, but as a hand intelligence move, as a practice drill, I think it's brilliant. You have to be able to have the sides of the deck all nice and smooth to start off with. You have to be able to go into a peek procedure. You have to show a card. So in fact, let's just get these all nice and square. Go through, show a card, let's say the Queen of Hearts, drop that off, then pick up a break above it. So you now have a break above that. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to turn the cards on their side by using my thumb, or basically pulling my fingers down, levering the deck up. And as it does, it creates a mini step here. Actually, if I remove my hand, in fact, if I do it here, a mini step here where my little finger, or the pad of my little finger, is actually resting on that. And what's going to happen, let's actually do this from here again. What's going to happen is, as I twist up, the pad of my little finger rests on that. I'm going to come over and start squeezing the cards from the side like this, but I'm really going to force the pad of my little finger in against the base of my hand, my left hand. And so as I start pulling my left hand down, I'm going to start pulling that card out like this. I'll start pulling that card out, and the cards on the face start moving forward. So I'm actually taking that card out of the middle. But if I bridge the cards and do this waterfall kind of cascade as I go upwards, right, like this, let's do it on the side so you can see. It basically forms a little ledge, meaning that all of the cards that fall in front of it, so if we have the 6 of hearts here, squeeze that out, and I'm starting to squeeze that out of the side. Now as that's coming out, I'm going to start bridging these cards, or kind of airing these cards and lifting up. And as they fall, because they fall as a wall, it's very difficult to do slowly, they all fall in front of this card. And this is this is the Charlie Miller Cascade control. It's a very tricky little control to master. There's a really nice feeling in the hands. It means there's quite a lot of combination of softness and touch and timing that you have to have. And like I said, I don't actually think it's a great control. This is the strangeness. for me around practicing moves specifically to get good hand intelligence and develop your skills. They're like, to me, training drills that aren't necessarily in of themselves great moves, but every now and again there are moves which we've identified here, which I think are really good at generating something in the hand, some kind of touch or timing in the hand that I think is very useful. And this is definitely one of them. This is the Charlie Miller Cascade Control. And it's a beautiful little thing. Lots of stuff going on, having to do this, having to drop a single card off. You have to knock it up to one side, which means there's control in this hand alone. And now my finger, as you can see there, is locked onto that pad. I have to push it in against that hand. I have to start pulling that out along with the face card as I then air these cards and lift them and drop them in that cascade fashion so that everything drops in front of that 2 of diamonds. I think this is a really beautiful little kind of technique, and one that if you want to develop better hand intelligence, I think this move will go a long way in helping that. So here we have the pressure fan. Now, I don't necessarily do a particularly good pressure fan. There are people that do far better pressure fans than I that are huge things, but it's a really good skill to have in the hands, unlike the thumb fan that we taught in other places in the basic section of Unreal Card Magic. This pressure fan is a very, very different feeling in the hands. I think getting a sense of this pressure shift is a useful thing. What's really happening here is basically completely different from the thumb fan. If we look at the thumb fan, it's almost moving around a pivot point. That's what happens with a thumb fan. It's moving around that central pivot almost. With the pressure fan, you're basically springing the cards off almost like this as you move the deck in a horseshoe type arc up one side of the hand and down the other. You'll be able to see this. It's very difficult to do this slowly, but you might be able to see this from the overhead a bit more. I want to move up one side of my hand, and then I'm basically missing out this middle section and then down the other side of the hand. This is what makes the fan a bit bigger as well, but it's really the pressure kind of shift. You can see almost them spinning off like that. So what's happening, I'm gripping between 2 fingers here at this end and my thumb here, and then you're bowing the cards, you're pushing in, and then as you're moving around, you're allowing those to kind of spring off and pop off. It's like a very interesting kind of feeling, hence why it's called the pressure fan. But it's an interesting feeling, and to develop that touch, I think, is a useful one. Now, I would never use a pressure fan really in Magic. It doesn't mean that you can't, of course that you can. I have no real use for it, but what I like is that this just having that hand intelligence, the ability to be able to do that move, I think it adds so much, and that's hence one of the reasons that that is in here, and it's a classic move. So you basically start, you twist inwards a bit, and you move up one side, around the top, and then down the other, as opposed to it just going around one central pivot point. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to go, I'll try and do this slow, up, and then around. Something like that without me dropping them. It's hard to do slow. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the pressure fan, but I can kind of get it happening. Now, I like this also closing it. As soon as I'm here, I use this finger to come around and close it back. So you get this kind of quick kind of opening and closing of the fan, which I kind of like. And again, like most of the hand intelligence things, I'm also looking to find flow and softness and rhythm within the move. The pressure fan is one of those moves that pretty much is really impossible to learn almost everywhere, really. There's never really been a great description of it. Even here, it's very difficult to describe it because it's hard for you to feel exactly what's happening with that pressure. But like I said, it's almost like that airing thing we talked about earlier on. There's almost a bit of that going on. You're right on the end with those 2 fingers. You can bevel the cards as well. For some people, that makes a difference. But you're kind of, as you're kind of squeezing them off and allowing them to come off as you move around. And a combination of those things allows them to kind of start moving around like that. You can almost, it's basically almost this type of feeling that's happening as you then continue to move that all the way around the deck. But this, again, is one of those moves that is just a nice move to get in the hands. And I'm not necessarily saying it should be used for anything else. I mean, it can be, of course, but it has this very, very nice feeling in the hands, and it's just a very, very good move to get down. Will take a bit of time because it does have a very knacky feeling to it, a particularly knacky feeling, and it's quite hard to get the feeling of that pressure and the close all in one. One of the other things I would say about the pressure fan is that there's a lot of pressure going on in the technique that you're having to try and control. And so I think what it also develops is this ability to control all of that stuff happening at once in the hands without them splaying out everywhere or you dropping them. So to be able to kind of develop that sense in the hands and develop a sort of softness with it, I think is something that teaches your hands how to overcome that. And as a result, the pressure fan is a good way to do that. You know, there are many descriptions of the pressure fan all over the place in many basic books, including the Royal Rotocarb Magic and stuff like that. There's many, many, many descriptions of it, but it's very difficult to get it. And so I think really one of the things is a combination of two things. This edge here, a feeling of this airing going on, the fact they're slowly kind of squeezing off, and the fact that there's this U shape in the hand, as opposed to them going around a central point. Combination of all of those things together, and you'll probably end up doing the pressure fan better than me. Now, this is a great technique. This is known as the Faro shuffle or the weave shuffle. The idea is to split at exactly 26, line the cards up, weave them together, one for one, all the way through, all the way to the very end. This is the Faro or the weave shuffle. Now, this will seem very, very complicated to begin with, and there's two sets of skills that are going on in this, which I really like. One is your ability to estimate to exactly halfway, and the other is to find that pressure that allows all of them to shuffle together. Now, what's going to happen here is you're going to split at 26, and you basically do that initially by estimating with your eye, and you can almost instantly feel where that is and see. And this is a skill. If you get too many, you'll notice when you try and do the perfect weave that it won't work. And if you had too few, you'll notice, the same thing, they won't match up. And over time, you get very good at being able to just split halfway. This again gives you that combination of intelligence between your hands and your eye, and that's very useful in and of itself. But once you actually split for the Faro or the weave shuffle, now many people have many different techniques. I'll show you how I do this. What happens is I basically hold one packet in this hand, my left hand. It's all very balanced. The edges are very square. So you also have to develop the ability to kind of have a square deck, split it, pull it apart. Often you do a tap in order to make it perfectly square, and have the same with the other half. So both halves now are perfectly square. Okay. Then you butt them up together, and if you see here, you'll actually see the ends are perfectly flush. And this is a really interesting little pressure shift here, because what's going to happen is I touch them together and you kind of rock this pressure. I start from the bottom up and I move them together, and you actually start seeing those open up. And all of a sudden that they weave perfectly one for one all the way through. Like that. Every single one of those has now woven. And this takes a bit of time. When you first start doing it, basically you'll just push them up next to each other and nothing will happen. Then all of a sudden they'll kind of like crack in, and you'll split a card or whatever. But over time you just learn to see. I can see that I had one too many. I move that over, weave up through. You see them all kind of move together like that. Let me actually get that there. You can actually see that all the way through. And now they're in place. And there's many kind of moves and flourishes and things that can kind of come from here. Once you're in this position, there's all kinds of kind of interesting things that you can do from this position. There's also interesting ways that you can then resolve it. So, for example, once you've actually done this shuffle here, we've pushed these in, you can either immediately do this, and you now have the cards shuffling one for one. Another interesting way of doing this is to rock these up to the fingertips like this, holding them in the right hand, holding both halves. Your hand stretches around the outside, the finger pushes up and the fingers pull down, and you hold it in this position, and then you just let go, keeping the finger on top, and you can just let that pressure go. Push down, and again, this allows you to control both sides, control the balance, and the pressures involved. There's a lot of stuff that comes into like a deft touch when it comes to learning a faro or a weave shuffle. And this is a very, very, very useful move. You start to learn a softness that comes through. And it's very knacky to start off with, but like I said, you just butt them up against each other. You can probably see this on the overhead here. Butt them up against each other, and you just very, very, I can actually already see I have one too many there. You just very, very, very softly start almost pushing the bottom together first, even though they're both perfectly square. All of a sudden, it just kind of almost becomes automatic. Look at that. It just opens up. Every single one of those opens up. Let's do that again, like this, like that. And all of those just open up. And you now have this really, really nice shuffle. There are many uses for the faro or weave shuffle as well. It's one of those ones that has real practical uses. You don't always need a 26 for 26. If you take off a small packet and just kind of shove them in and do this, at this point I know that that small packet that I took off is been woven in actually under another smaller packet. So imagine, for example, I had these 4 cards here and I wanted them to be, let's actually try this, put them face up so you can see I actually wanted them to be woven every other. Right, one little shuffle, and now those cards there, as you can see, have now been woven every other, and that's just doing that with the weave or faro shuffle. So it's a very, very useful move. Like I said, it's knacky and it will take time, but you're learning multiple skills with this particular move. The ability to split at 26 and the kind of ability to actually find that weave. Over time, you learn to weave in or out. So it means, what I mean by that is that I can either have this be the top card at the end of that weave process. So like this now, that's actually going second, it's going in, it's an in shuffle, or I can actually get that so that that goes out, and that's now the last one. And that tiny difference, almost of a width of a card, you can actually learn to control. It's interesting. The faro shuffle, definitely a hand intelligence move, and one worth learning. The T.G. Murphy deck flip. This is a really lovely little move and just allows you to flip the deck up in the hands without any problems whatsoever. And you can do this anytime, anywhere. There's no problems, nothing falls out. It's all great. And there are real practical uses for this move. Sometimes you just need to adjust the cards in the hand, especially for something that may be a bit more visual in a gambling demonstration or something. You want to do that. But just to have that balance and control in the hand, like I did there, is really useful. Okay, it's just a nice little kind of flip of the deck. The best way to actually learn and practice this is by putting the deck in the box, because once it's in the box, you can just do this no problem. In fact, you can do much higher ones, but basically the same thing is at play here. This is how I would suggest doing it now, is basically you're going to put your forefinger curled underneath, your thumb is on one side, and the second finger's on the other. For me, it's mainly the second finger that does this, although you can bring the others in. And as I push up, and you feel that tension, I'm just going to release with these fingers. And because they release before this thumb, they end up flipping like this. Okay, so you can actually control it to do a 360 quite easily, or just a half flip like that. Now, once these are in the out of the box, you can actually learn to get them to move like this. I often do a small kind of toss with the hand, almost like a toss and then a drop. If you do those both together, you have this really nice little kind of move happening. This is the T.G. Murphy deck flip. And again, you have to have balance and control and pressure. And when you first start, I don't know if I'll be able to do it now. I'm going to try and actually make a card flip out. I can't. When I first started trying to learn this, every time it flipped around, several cards came off the top, several came off the bottom. Terrible. But over time, you just learn to get that control in the hands. And it's just a very, very useful, very great little move that's going to really develop your hand intelligence. So we're going to look at the one-handed top palm, which looks something like that. And this is a move that I actually don't use that often in Magic, but again, it's one of those hand intelligence moves that's useful to develop, and it will increase your skill. And it is useful, and some people do swear by it. Personally, I don't. I prefer a two-handed palm, but that's another discussion. This move can also be done on the table by tapping the deck on the side. It's actually, I think, a very good use for the move. If you're tapping down here, you can palm that top card in one hand in like this. Now, what's happening here is that you have the thumb at the back and the fingers on the side. The second finger and thumb are kind of in this position and relatively balanced, and your little finger, or pinky, look at it there, it's going to push upwards or outwards, and you kind of rock the deck forward. You kind of bevel almost like this. You can see this in the overhead here. You're going to bevel and rock forward, and as you rock forward, you keep this pinky finger absolutely straight, and it just pushes over. And if you look inside on the overhead there, you'll see that top card pop up into the hand, and you squeeze it in, and that's inside the hand. This is the top palm, the one-handed top palm. If you start with actually practicing it on the side, on the table here, it's very good, because as you push on the side, it can't go anywhere other than into your hand. It can't leak out of the side. It's a very good way to actually practice that move, to get that going into the palm. So put the deck down, get it locked in this position. This little finger here is going to push like that, or keep straight as you kind of rock that deck. And you just want to, I'll try and expose it and actually make it swing out. But if we do it like this, I'm actually pushing over that edge like that. Oh, what do you know? I just did it perfectly. I was trying to actually make it swing out. It's actually quite hard to do. But if you do that, you actually now get that fully into palm. This is a knacky move, and there are many ways to hide it. You can kind of draw the sleeve up here, and as you come back and you go to draw this sleeve up, that's when you execute the move here in the hand, like that, and you now have that in palm. There's many ways that you can use it under misdirection. You can pass it to the hand, do something, and basically you haven't, you can make an argument that it's more deceptive sometimes than a standard two-handed palm. Personally, I prefer the two-handed palm. The one-handed palm for me adds too much tension, and I'm going to go down a rabbit hole of this not feeling natural to me. However, I think that, again, it's developing that hand intelligence, which is a very useful thing. I think that to be able to control the deck and move it in this way and separate a card with this right hand up into the palm is a very useful move. And I think there really are some times where it can be useful. But this is a classic hand intelligence move. Well, it's a move, really. I'm calling them hand intelligence moves, but it's a classic technique, which if you can get that in the palm, it doesn't really feel like many other techniques. It really doesn't, and it has its own unique feel to it. And so the one hand top palm I would recommend practicing with. I mean, I occasionally just play with this move anyway to see if I can find better ways of actually using it, or if there's a better kind of way of using it naturally within Magic. But for you to just practice this, again, the table version I actually think is genuinely good, because if there's a reason for your hands to be in this position, you know, you tap the table and you move back to the table edge, I think this is when that move feels really great. So the one-handed top palm, great move. Give it a go. Now, anyone that's seen me handle cards for long enough has probably seen me do this technique. And this is the Paul David one-handed shuffle. It's a one-handed overhand shuffle. Oh, look, a cheeky T.G. Murphy deck flip. But also it can be used to control the stock, which is very useful. This basically is, I'll show you what's happening. Basically here, there's an overhand shuffle happening in one hand, okay, like this. Very useful for like stretching the fingers out and balance and control from the thumb. But like I said, it can also be used to control four aces or anything, any stock you want really. In this case, that's what we're controlling because those are on the bottom, and this is only shuffling the middle packet, but it doesn't appear to do that, especially side on. You can't really tell at all. At best, or what, I mean, at worst, this just looks like a cut if you do it once. If you do it multiple times, you do it that way. So in this case, again, that's protecting these. Now, If we look from above, you'll see what's happening. This is in a straddle grip like this. It's locked in a straddle grip. My thumb comes down to the edge and tucks over the end like this. And then I'm going to pull a bunch of cards out of the middle like that. So let's try and pull out a bigger bunch, in fact. So we do this, and then they're going to pivot around this first finger here. So all these stay here. I'm going to move them all the way out. My thumb moves all the way over, and basically my lower finger, little finger, lowers at the same time to allow them to clear. They then come back over, and I allow pressure from my thumb to allow some from the front to drop off. As I come back, I allow some more to drop off like this. You keep going. Now you can also just do that straight from the back like that. Now that's a real shuffle. So if we look on the overhead there, you can actually kind of come down and just take, you don't have to take from the middle, you can just take straight from the back. Now this is just legitimately mixing and shuffling all of those cards. But for me, I just don't really see the point. I may as well I just take from the middle, because then I know I'm always controlling a bottom stock. This is really good because it develops a sense of balance and technique and touch in the hands. It's got practical value. It looks kind of flourishy and cool. And I think that it's very, 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 useful and looks great. So it's worth your time putting into it. And there's a lot of, like most of these moves, over time, this will actually become very, very light in the hands. So it'll just be very, very light type of thing. When you start, it's full of tension. And like most moves, when you start them, the reason why you are struggling is because you're putting too much tension. If I grip this in a death grip right now, there's no chance. My thumb won't even move that far, because all the tendons in my hand are basically like shortening my thumb tendon, or the relaxation of my thumb tendon. So I can't even get over. And even if I do, to get them out now and past everything else, they're going to explode. So most of the time with a lot of techniques, as you get better and better, you realize you're actually holding it lighter and lighter, and that's a difficult thing. This is certainly one of those ones. This is such a light feeling. There's almost no tension in my fingers whatsoever as I'm doing this. It's just a very, very light move. It feels very light and breezy. And but like I said, it has a lot of value. And this is the Paul David one-handed shuffle. Okay, like that. We'll take a knack, we'll take a bit of time, straddle grip, come to this edge with the thumb, lift up like that. And then you've got this bit, it's the most tricky bit, letting pressure go to allow some to come off the front, like that, as you rock those around like this. But if you bring those all together, you get this really nice shuffling action, like that. It's a nice move. So now we get to a classic move, and this is the diagonal palm shift. Okay, the diagonal palm shift, SW Erdnase. In fact, the move goes back a bit further than that, really, but Erdnase definitely popularized this and added a lot of touches to it previously. I mean, there's a description of a diagonal pass in Sachs, which is a rather clumsy one, but the description in Erdnase of this move was quite a beautiful one. And there's many different ways to kind of approach it and do it. And again, I don't necessarily think this is a good move for Magic. I think there are often many other moves that are better almost every single time. However, there is something about the kind of mechanical efficiency of this move and Erdnase's moves in general, where there's a lightness and a strange kind of fluidity to them that I think is very, very good for your hands to kind of feel and develop. In this, a card is pushed through the deck and down into the left palm. I then add it back onto the bottom, and I keep this as all one fluid movement. You can see from above here, if we push this through, this is going through, I've just rotated the deck and now added it back onto the bottom. So what's really happening here is, as this is being pushed into the deck like this, you kind of push it down, and it's in this kind of diagonal position. So as I push in, I just riffle down, push this here. I'm going to push this side only, and it's going to kind of catch my little finger here. So it's in this diagonal position. Now, these two fingers are going to get out of the way like this underneath. And I'm going to move with my thumb on that far corner of that card. You can see it just there, sticking out. I'm now going to move that card backwards through the deck by basically moving like this. So I just kind of move my hand backwards, and then in a continuing action, at this point, it's going to pivot between this finger and my thumb, right thumb, which is here. And it's basically going to move like this, in this type of an angle, okay, around towards my palm. And at this point, my fingers can then close around that and I can palm it. Now, if I just put the deck down at that point, it's palmed. Whereas if I rotate around like this, it looks like a square up. So let's do that again. In this position, I push it into the side. It's got that diagonal position. It's locked here. These two fingers get out of the way. I then squeeze that basically backwards and down through the deck. So it's moving. That card is now literally moving. You see it start to peek out at the bottom there. Just kind of move that whole thing down. And as that's moving through, at some point, I'll feel it touch my right thumb. Okay, so it will come all the way down and it will touch my, see in the overhead here, it's going to touch my right thumb. And when it does, and it touches my right thumb, now I continue my little finger moving around and it pivots around towards the palm. And now, obviously, if I now just put that deck down, if I move this forward and I put the deck down, it's now just in the palm. So that type of an action at full speed would look like that, and you have this in the palm. But if you rotate the deck as you do this, at this point here, if I start rotating outwards, my hand, now I can come back around and I can grab it here. And now I just have this sitting in palm, in the hand here. What I like to now do is now add this back to the bottom in one fluid motion, which is similar to the Vernon edition, where I just put my finger up here on the side and move it around to the bottom in one action as my finger comes underneath. I kind of like this as a drill to be able to kind of move this through, rotate round, add to the bottom and square. I feel it's just a very nice practice drill for the hands. So here we go, we're going to push this in. Gets pushed in like this, move it back, get those two fingers out of the way, move it back through the deck. It now starts pivoting round that little finger and thumb towards, and then I start rotating outwards here and here. It's still in palm. And then as I get to here, my little finger on my left hand comes around to the side and it kind of moves up. My forefinger comes underneath and I square. And the combination of these moves, there's a very interesting mechanical efficiency in this Erdnase move. Very interesting mechanical flow, and to feel that shifting pivot point as you go through, I think is very good for the hands, because you're feeling this action is going through on one level, then changing to this, and this, like this, like this, as it's going through. It's a very, very nice, beautiful move. And again, I don't really necessarily think it's actually good for deception in many ways. It can be, and there are ways that you can say to someone, would you kind of shuffle the cards up for me and hand it out? And that can be an invisible palm. Maybe not invisible from this angle and where we are here, but it can be a very, very efficient move. I tend not to use it, but I like practicing it. I'm also going to give you a cheeky bonus here. There's a way of doing this without actually doing the insertion of the card. If you just have a finger break somewhere in the middle. So, for example, if I was to do this with there's a finger break here, there you go, there you can see it. I'm just going to pull, you see this on the other end, pull a card out with my finger. And now I can go straight into that diagonal palm shift action. Just basically pulling a random card out from the side of the deck and then adding it to the bottom in that action. Very, very nice mechanical move, a brilliant description in Erdnase. And there are many, many people that have talked about this move. But I just think it's a really nice move to play for that lightness of touch in the hands. You'll also notice something here, that it's all kind of happening in one action. You know, even if you don't do the rotation, even if you just put that straight down, you know, it's kind of all happening in one action. As you push in, you just come down and that's going in. It's just got this beautiful kind of fluidity in the move. And I think you have to have a light touch. You can't really grip the deck too hard. Otherwise something will fail. You need to kind of have this lightness here in order to have this look and feel natural. But there's something in this move that I think is really, really worth practicing. It's been around for over 100 years, yet it, it's one of those kind of modern classics in a way. The diagonal palm shift, a hand intelligence move you should have. Here we are, another one of Erdonez's moves, and this case, the SWE shift. This is a pass, a shift done at the fingertips. And again, I don't think that this is a great move for magic or anything else. There are countless better ways to perform a shift or a pass, but there is again something in the engineering of Erdonesian moves which are very, very interesting. There's a lightness and mechanical efficiency to them, which I think is really, really interesting. And I think often people get hoodwinked into thinking that that somehow makes them more deceptive or better. I don't think so. I just think that they're very, very interesting pieces of engineering when it comes to sleight of hand. And they develop a certain touch and lightness in the hand. And this one has this real kind of light mechanical efficiency. And it's very, very odd. And to kind of develop this technique, I think is very useful because again, it's extraordinarily light. And what's happening here is, if we look at this from the overhead, I'm going to have the deck in this position, in a longitudinal position here, and have it along the hand in this way. And I'm just going to lift up on some cards, maybe like 15, 20 cards, like this, and get a break. Okay, so at the back now, I have a break like that. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to take over the break with my right thumb, like this, as my hand kind of shifts backwards. And what I'm going to do is currently all my fingers are pointing upwards. I'm going to kind of shift my hand backwards and allow my fingers to point through. So basically my little finger, currently how it's holding the break, you can see there on the overhead, is now going to kind of shift around and go through the deck. You'll see what I mean. If I move back, you can see it there. And now it's kind of going up and through like that. Now, this is where it gets very, very strange. What's going to happen here is I'm going to have my finger underneath like this. And there is some kind of tension holding that together. What's going to happen now is I'm going to allow the top packet to be pulled backwards by the thumb and the little finger here as my fingers push down on the front, and an edge will emerge. When that edge emerges by pushing on it, the only thing that's really keeping that balanced is the forefinger bent underneath. And as a result of pushing on it, and the way in which you're pushing on the outside edge of this packet and you're pulling on the inside edge of these two, they kind of open and flip past each other. And you get this, we see this from the side angle here, you get this popping action as they kind of move past each other like this. Now, obviously doing it from here, you can see everything. Whereas if you're seeing this side, it kind of can just look more like you're just squaring those cards up. Basically an extraordinarily difficult pass to make look totally invisible. Obviously can be used as a color change, not from there to there or from there to there, Benjamin. Let's see if we can eventually, oh no, that was a bit better, but let's see if we can get some form of contrast. Oh, there we go, finally, black to red. So it can be used in that way. But to me, I don't really care about this move as a deceptive move. Like I said, there's something in the engineering. It's incredibly light. You have to kind of develop this poise and balance at the tips of the fingers in order to get this feeling right. And I think it develops a certain touch and softness in the hand. So what I actually think is very good about a lot of the Erdonez engineering is it means a lot of the stuff is at fingertips and it's light. And as a result, you have to develop this lightness. We talked about the diagonal palm shift. In fact, the way it's actually described in the original Erdonez book is actually up at the fingertips, and it's pushed through sideways before this goes down. It's actually, in a way, a better technique. Anyway, that's another thing. The point is this SWE shift is right again up at the fingertips, and it's all fingertippy. Look at that. And yet it's balanced. It's kind of amazing that it even works at all. I mean, I don't know how you would even develop this type of an idea really for something like this. It's very, very, very interesting. And there are lots of different covers and things you can do as you kind of hide the front and do the move as you come forward and all that type of stuff. To me, it's more about the actually getting the mechanical efficiency in the hand. And like I said, if you have this break, this longitudinal position, you take over, you shift the hand back through so the fingers go through. You're only gripping the back portion of this top. It's easier, by the way, if you only have a smaller portion that you have a break under at the top. You're only gripping at the very back edge of this top packet between the thumb and the little finger. And now I just kind of push down on the outside edge and I allow it to come out and an edge just appears. And as a result of that, this whole bottom packet now balances between basically this finger or these two fingers and the curled finger underneath it, like balances out there as that's pulled out of the way and then kind of shoots up to the top. You know, a very rapid action, you know, works in a flash, and at the right angle, it can have some merit, I'm sure, but I think there's something in the efficiency, the mechanical engineering of this, which can add greatly to hand intelligence, and I would recommend practicing it. Like I said, it just feels beautiful and has become one of my fidget moves. Here's another sneaky little bonus. If you actually do it longitudinally, you can get the same type of action happening lengthways, basically performing exactly the same pass but lengthways, which can be turned into a, oops, not like that, it can't, Benjamin, but it can be turned into an interesting kind of false cut as you come forward. There's lots of different actions, or you could say to someone, would you cut off some cards and do the move? So actually held that way, it could be seen as more practical. But the original way, which is, it was done sideways like this, and not like flat on this plane like this, but actually tipped down at an angle on the side. It's like you're pointing the spine there like this, so that it's very, very difficult to kind of see any kind of flash. Something happens, there's a slight kind of thing that happens, a little jerky action, but it's actually difficult to see the packets truly move around each other. Very, very interesting thing for hand intelligence. If your hands can develop and feel what this feels like, I think it's very, very, very useful for you in scaling up what sleight of hand can feel like. This feels unlike a lot of other moves. In fact, that's most of the work in Erdnase is like that. So the SWE shift, a very tricky little move to get right, but once you do, these packets will balance and, you know, move around each other in a flash. Definitely worth practicing the SWE shift. Another Erdnase move. This is the Erdnase one-handed shift. Looks like this. Now, I know you're thinking, well, we learned a Charlier pass, and you know, it's just another one-handed shift. This particular move is a very, very interesting one, and if you haven't learned it, it is phenomenally difficult. Especially when you first start learning it, it's incredibly difficult to learn. It feels impossible, and because the way in which it's put together, it just feels that there's no way those packets can move around each other. If you notice, the bottom one is coming out and is moved around up to the top, right? And there are ways to actually hide this as a real shift. You can come around, cover the front as you kind of cover the deck. You can do it behind the arm as you're doing something else, actually kind of do it here as you're covering something. There's many ways to kind of cover this type of a move, but again, it's not really the point. To me, it's the kind of mechanical efficiency of this, which I really like. So here is what is happening. Again, another strange position from Erdnase. It's basically like a straddle grip. So if we look from above here, you're going to see this straddle grip like this, but not a normal straddle grip where you've got the first finger like this, like basically like this. This is a different type of grip. You're basically coming over the front edge with your thumb. Okay, so how I do this is I kind of move the deck downwards a bit in my hand. So you can see this on the overhead. I'm now going to push the deck downwards a bit with my hand as my third finger tucks underneath my first finger comes around the side. And now my thumb comes to here. So let me just do that again. So I'm here, I'm going to push it down a little bit. My third finger goes underneath as my first finger goes around the side and moves down. And then my thumb comes over to the edge. And your thumb is basically gripping the pack in alignment with the little finger. And what's going to happen now is you're going to basically start lifting a bit with the thumb, and it's going to pivot a packet off against this little finger at the back. So you start lifting like this, and your right fingers start lowering a bit. And now they kind of open up. And again, this packet as it comes out is precariously balanced. I mean, all there is to stop that falling at this stage, you can actually see on that side camera, is like a third finger, that my third finger is balancing that packet. I mean, it's really not balanced at all. Well, in fact, it's not supported massively, but it is balanced. And this is what's so interesting about this particular technique, is there's this really interesting balancing act going on, and it's incredibly light. Now, if you haven't ever done this before and you start doing it, you are going to feel like your hands have been put in a meat grinder. It's going to feel like the most tense thing you've ever practiced in your life. It will feel like there's no space whatsoever to get this packet out. You'll think that there's just no room. It won't come out. I remember when I first started learning this, I was like, this is impossible. I remember reading it. I hadn't actually seen anyone do the move, but I remember reading it and thinking, this is just a rubbish bullshit description that doesn't actually work. They've just put it in there to sound fancy. But over time, you learn that this actually does work. If we look at from above as well, there's also a way of twisting it outwards. Actually says this in Erdnase, kind of rotating it outwards and then back the other way, like almost like an S shape. You see that there? I'll try and exaggerate it for you. So instead of it just coming out fully sideways, you can actually get it to kind of come out that way a bit and then rock back that way. And sometimes that actually makes the operation a bit easier to snake it out over the top there. And you also keep your thumb in this position the whole way through, including at the end. You want it to go back. You don't want your thumb kind of looping up or doing any other madness. This is the Erdnase one-hand shift. But again, this teaches a real lightness in the hand. It's this incredible lightness of touch in order to do this, an interesting engineering. There's a pivoting between the thumb and the pinky finger. There's a kind of a balancing act going on between these first two fingers and the third finger in terms of supporting this precariously balanced packet. And then it all drops back on with this kind of grace. But yet it will all, once you start getting this down, you're just not going to drop that packet. It just stays exactly where it is. It's a really, really beautiful technique. It is very tough. But this is why I've included it in the hand intelligence stuff, because I think, like all of the Erdnase stuff, there's really interesting engineering. Now, this doesn't mean this is the best one-hand shift to use, and there are other one-hand shifts that I think are more practical to use in magic, but there's something about the feeling, the lightness. Again, I've stressed this a few times. I can't begin to tell you how light this feels. It almost feels like it's self-working. Like it's just kind of naturally happening. Like if you give the deck to anyone, it will just naturally do an Erdnase shift in their hand. That's what it almost feels like. It just feels so effortless and simple. And that's what's so interesting about the engineering, because I think, well, when, Erdnase actually engineered this, then he didn't know it would be like that when he started, because he couldn't do it. It's a chicken and the egg situation. Very, very interesting. And so this is why I think it's worth practicing. Like this, like this, like this. The Erdnase one-handed shift, a beautifully engineered one-handed pass. Try and do this as many times as possible. You can see that third finger underneath, balanced, pulled out, put on top. A beautiful move, another beautiful move by the enigmatic SW Erdnase. Another move from the expert at the card table by SW Erdnase. And this move is a transformation with two hands. I don't think I've ever seen anyone actually do it, and I don't necessarily even think that this is a great move. I imagine that this was for a stage or something where you would hold the cards and apparently display it like this, and you would show the cards like this, turn them around, wave the hand over, and it would change. This is a transformation or a color change of the card to a selected card, probably more than anything else. I don't necessarily think that this is a particularly good color change, or transformation in that respect. But there's something about the engineering of it, again, that's very, very interesting. This is almost like a one-handed top palm. There's a strange pivoting action. It's incredibly light and it all appears to be up at the fingertips. And I've never seen anyone do it, but it's one of those moves that I just practice and play with as a kind of a hand intelligence move. If you actually look at this from underneath, it's rather bizarre, or if I actually try and expose it, there's a pivoting action happening between two fingers here. And they're kind of like, look at them kissing. Look at that, yum, yum. And then as I turn, why did I say yum, yum? That made it creepy. As I turn around, look, it's pivoting like this into the other hand. It's being pushed into that hand. Then this is coming forward to grab this packet here. And then this is being waved over top. It's just a very, very interesting move. And it's like all the things we've looked at so far with Erdnase, you know, the diagonal palm shift is amazing, okay, in terms of its engineering. The SWE shift, the one-handed shift, and now this color change where you have this really interesting pivoting action happening that's going into the hand. It's light, it's got all that same Erdnasian engineering in it. If you don't have this book, I mean, I could talk about this for years about this book. There's all kinds of craziness in it. It's full of bonkers madness, but it's also full of really interesting technical innovations and developments, which I think is very good for someone who's interested in sleight of hand. It doesn't mean that it's the way, and you know, it's you know, still over 100 years old. There is, however, beauty involved in this book, and there is really sage and smart wisdom that's people to this day still haven't appreciated how wise some of the things are in that book. The engineering of moves, though, are a bit bonkers and crazy and not even the most practical, but there is something about the engineering of them which is beautiful. And so if we were to look at this color change, this is the sixth method, the transformation with two hands sixth method. It starts by the card that's going to be changed is this one on the back here. Or this one will be the one that's changed. This is the one that it will become. I'm going to basically hold the deck almost like I'm going to do a one-handed top palm with my left hand. So this is why I think this is probably done out to the side and shown to an audience where you would like cover the cards or something, or appear to cover the, you know, do it once, no. You know, maybe do this a couple of times and come down, no. And then maybe on the third occasion you would say, okay, let me just one more time. And then you would come forward and do this maybe. It would be something like that. I'm probably moving out of shot there too much. I have no idea. But the point is, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get into this position effectively exactly like a one-handed top palm, but with the left hand. And now what's going to happen is you are going to bring the other hand, the other little finger, right to the edge here. So they kiss. Now, all that's going to happen is you are going to start pushing that corner of that card off the end, almost like a top palm, almost a little bit, not over the end, but almost like down to the side, until this finger can basically grab or sit on the side of it. And so once you move that out to that position, it's basically on that card. It's literally resting on the side of it. Let me just get that right to the camera, like that. Okay. And so now pretty much the card is also, you'll notice the top corner, it's quite hard to show this. Maybe on the overhead, you can almost see that maybe. The top corner of the card has started to escape this first finger as well. And now what's going to happen is I'm going to start rotating this hand like this as my thumb starts moving up and taking the deck with it. As it does, you'll notice that back card stays right in this position. It basically stays at that point in space almost, as this moves out and away, leaving that card in that position. And then what happens is, as it moves out, it moves further out. If you notice from the overhead there, this starts moving away, and it's now supported in the hand by the left little finger. And then in that action, I can then come around and grab this side, and then the hand can come up and perform that transformation. But the engineering of it is kind of crazy and bonkers, but it's incredibly light. It has this beautiful kind of lightness to it, and this fingertip nature to it that I think is really, really interesting and very rarely ever seen. So like I said, very quickly, same type of position, you start pushing down on this, you kind of pull it to the side a little bit to get that released, you clip it on the edge there, and you start moving that like this as the deck moves forward. As it's getting out of the way, the little finger pushes it in, then it moves around, the little finger lets go, it's now in the palm. You can come back and then you can add that onto the top of the deck. I'm trying to do this without going out of frame this time. So I imagine that they would have kind of covered it once or twice or a few times or something in that position until eventually they'll, be in this position. So maybe one more time. There we go. So I think something like that may have been what it looked like, but this is just a gorgeous move with, again, that bonkers Erdnasian engineering. And I think it's a really good hand intelligence move because it develops this lightness of touch that you can get from a lot of that stuff. So I think it's a very, very interesting technique to play with, and one that very few people ever really see. Okay, so we've left the town of Erdnase. We're no longer in Erdnase. There's lots to practice in there, by the way, in that book. There's lots to go through. It's amazing, but we're not there anymore. We're going to go somewhere else. This is a slightly different move, a bit of bonkers madness of mine, which I thought would be interesting to kind of teach you for hand intelligence stuff. This isn't a secret move. This is something you're going to kind of see. The idea is just to dribble the cards and palm a card out of the middle of that dribble. And you literally take it from the side and put it into the palm in the other hand. And this means that you're having to do a lot of different stuff here. Dribble the cards like this. My thumb has to then catch a card as it goes down, moves it out and straight into palm in this hand. So it is a bit bonkers. This is a bonkers technique, but one that is, I think, very interesting for, you've got touch and timing and movement and transitions all happening all at once. So here's what this looks like. I do this. As I'm dribbling like this left thumb is going to hit a corner of a single playing card. Now it is possible, and so I have worked on this, to kind of do this and try and take out 2. Okay. Sometimes even doing this and taking out 3. Almost. 3 is hard because they're dropping so much. But did I get it? Yes, I got it. There's 3. But most of the time, I try to just take out 1 card into the palm and then put this into the hand. This is, again, I'm trying to just play with the move and develop a certain kind of touch and timing and feel. So as I'm dribbling the cards like this and they're falling, my left thumb comes back to that edge, and as I go through, I'm going to hit the card out. I cannot do this slowly because they are dropping too fast. I can't do it slow, but I'm going to hit the card out like that. And as I do and I hit it forward, it's going to balance on my second finger of my right hand. Okay. And then as that happens, I take that out, my fingers come and I grab this and then pull it into the palm. Okay. So I'm like this, I hit like this. So it's now pivoted out. My fingers come around the edge and grab it. So it's now held between these two. And I then pull it back into the palm. When I do it slowly, it always bows the other way. But when done fast, it should just go straight in. And look, we can see that again from here like this. I hit, grab, move it back into the palm like that. And I feel that it's just kind of giving my hands this kind of sensitivity. This is not a secret move or one that you should be doing like that, but for magic purposes. But to me, it's just a hand intelligence move. It's something, there's lots of other things as well, by the way. So once I've actually done this, I hit it out. I often try and do like singles and then doubles or triples. And then as I've got it in palm, as I come back, I add this on. So I also am practicing the add-on with that move. So this kind of dribble, take out, practice, put back on. Like this, dribble, hit, take out, add on. Okay, so again, this time I'll try and do, so that's a single, I'll try and get a double. Whoops, I'm gonna overcompensate under these lights, I know it. Nope, that's a single again. I'm only gonna get singles now, that's probably a triple. Yep, so I can feel the difference. So maybe I haven't been practicing all day. That's another, probably quadruple, that's 4. Oh, look at that, it is. So this, like this, and then I add back on. Dribble, hit, take straight in. Like that. And this basically just allows me to practice the kind of transitions and moves. Now, I'm never going to have to do this ever in an effects, but the fact that you can kind of start getting that speed, it means that if I've ever got a card or cards here, right, they're in my hands, I can instantaneously palm them. No matter where they are, I've only got to have them in just a normal biddle grip, basically. Within a nanosecond, they can be palmed, because actually what I'm doing here is I'm moving from a biddle grip, gripping on the edges with these two fingers, twisting them around into the palm. So from just a very picking up and then moving over here, I could basically get those into palm from just a standard biddle grip without really having to do much, but they almost just twist straight in. Almost becomes automatic. So to me, it's like I get so used to this, doing this little drill, that it becomes so effortless that if I was to pick up a packet off a table and just like put it over there or whatever, I know I've already got this in palm. So I'm always looking for certain level of hand intelligence to come into my work where I kind of don't have to think. It almost feels automatic. And this particular center dribble steel drill is one of those ones that will kind of really develop that, okay? And this is it's fun to do. It'll be tricky to start off with, and you'll just end up getting cards coming out all over the place. But over time, you'll just be able to take that card out in the palm, add it on, and develop hand intelligence. Fun. Okay, so no dribble madness, no Erdnase madness. This is a different form of madness. This is a form of palming drill that I would use a lot. This is a hand wash drill that is kind of bonkers and madness and doesn't really make much sense whatsoever. And this isn't really designed not to flash. I'm probably, there's no way I can't flash this on this camera angles. But if you watch this from above on the overhead, you'll see that there's a lot happening here, and this is a circular drill. This is one that's basically allowing me to practice different palm positions in the hands and keep going around and round in circles, really, in different ways. And I'll show you exactly what's happening here. But this was just to develop kind of fluidity and hand intelligence. Now, I'm never going to do this in front of someone, but it just means that if I want to add from, let's say, a palm to a left palm and do a transfer, I absolutely can, or backwards I can. If I want to go into a cop position, which I have here, or transfer from a cop back into a palm, then I absolutely can. Or from that into like, oops, I'm flashing it there, into like an LTP or longitudinal position, which is a different thing, and then back into a full palm and around. There's lots of different moves that are kind of this, but the bottom line is I'm just trying to develop softness in the hands and better hand intelligence when it comes to palming. And if I can do this, then this is very useful. Now, the other thing you can do is do this with multiples. Exactly the same thing. So now we're just doing the same thing, but with 4 cards here instead of the 1. Now, this is exactly the same stuff, and this can, you know, rotate around. So 4 in this hand, and now we have 4 in this hand. This is a palm wash drill, and really for me helps you understand kind of touch and timing. I'm really not thinking about it flashing at all, because this isn't really about that for me. I'm never going to do this in front of someone. So I'll show you what I'm actually doing here. The first thing is the palm wash from one hand to the other, right? This alone, just getting this down, pausing here, then moving, instead of doing it all in one fluid motion. So this is the other thing I'll do. Sometimes I do this drill all in one kind of fluid motion. Other times I stop and I just kind of like break it up into like different sections, right, as I'm doing it, and then go back and all this stuff. I'm just trying to develop that soft touch. So here goes. Here in this palm position, the standard palm wash here is going from this hand to this hand, transferring from this hand. So I'm going to come over, knock it across into the other palm position like this, okay, and then move this hand around, just kind of like stroking the hand, really, like this. Self-soothing is what this is. It's nice. So this is just the standard hand wash thing. Now, what I'm going to do now is transfer it, at some point, transfer it into a cop. So my hand comes down and puts it into a cop position. Okay, I can now come back and go back into a palm if I want to, full palm, and then go back into the cop here, and then go back into a full palm, back into the cop. You know, all of this basically, I'm just trying to get fluidity in the hands and break it and bring in broken rhythms into it. But the entire sequence, just to flow through, was like this. So I'm doing the palm wash sequence. I go into the cop, I do this. Then when I come back, I'm actually going to put it into like a longitudinal position. This is my hand kind of like brushes down here. And as I come back over to squeeze the hand like this, I put it into the left palm. And now I can kind of circle back around again, back to the other palm, back into the cop, back into the longitudinal, back up into there, like this, back into the palm wash to this side. And again, you can just keep rotating this around and around and around. But this basically, to me, just develops softness. It means that I can just immediately go into a cop or transfer out, and I don't have to really think about it. I just know that I can just do it, and it works. And this particular drill is really going to help grow your kind of hand intelligence when it comes to movement and softness and fluidity of that happening. And like I said, don't just do it all fluid, play with some of it being fluid, but sometimes just kind of break and stop, bring the hands together, remove the body position, do it like this once, come away, now go into the cop for a second, now come away, not here, so you'll see it, boom, then come back up into this. There's lots of different movements all happening at the same time, just getting your hands used to this kind of like fluid kind of transition between those positions. This is a really, really nice drill. And if you watch that back on slow motion, I'm sure you'll catch most of it. But look, boom, I just go through very slowly again. Here, go into a cop position. Okay. Then it goes into this longitudinal, which is held like this. Then this is put straight into the palm, like this. And then I'm here. Then I can rotate back around to this hand. I can put it back into that cop, back into that kind of LTP position, actually, I think it is, like that. And then you could just stop and just rotate hand washes from left to right, if you want. Or just go cop, back up to palm, cop, back up to palm. But this will really improve your palming, because now when all you have to do is just do a palm and wait there for a second, you don't need a transfer or anything, and you just can relax. This is the easiest thing in the world, palming now. Now you don't have to do anything. If you'd have to do one transfer as you do something else, all of a sudden, this feels like the easiest thing on earth, okay? So, a really interesting palm wash drill that I've used for many years, and hopefully you can start now using it too. So here's another hand intelligence thing that I love. This involves dribbling the cards and putting one down there, another one there, another one there, and finally one there. And in this one, there's one card. In this one, there's two. In this one, there's three. And in this one, there is four. This is an interesting drill. This can also be done by just pushing cards off like this. And again, you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is an interesting drill to do. And there's really not much in the way of explanation for this, apart from just practice it. For me, this is a really great way of developing a sense of touch. We talked elsewhere about the push-off second deal and stuff like that, but learning to be able to push off cards and know that you've got, say, 4 cards now under a break, that's a very useful skill. Or if you specifically needed, say, 3, then I know I've got 3. If you need to be able to do exactly the same thing, but you needed it with a dribble, so you need to get to here and get 3 cards, I think that's 3, for a second I thought I didn't, yep, then this is a very useful skill. And the way to do this is just to practice, to get 1. Okay, now we're going to try and feel that just a bit thicker than that, to feel and stop on 2, and we get 2. Same for 3, we're going to go up all the way up and just get to that point where it feels like 3, and it's 3. 4 is the tricky one. 4 here. I don't even know myself. Oh, yes, I got 4. So This is really just practicing and trying to feel those numbers in the fingertips. And this really isn't a demonstration or anything like that. This is just one of those things with yourself. I think you can just sit there and think, okay, I'm gonna try and push off 3. There we go, I've got 3. This can be very useful for counting and doing all kinds of stuff, but it's gonna build up the hand intelligence at your fingertips. There's a different type of feel in this type of move from touch and timing, and it actually has tremendous practical value. And yeah, lots of practice has to come into that. There's really nothing I can say. I mean, you're just dribbling cards and pushing them off. But you're going to learn to feel that sense of touch with the fingers here and learn to feel it here. So you can just stop at that number. Excellent. What fun. Hand intelligence stuff. It's the best. So well done. Got through all of those moves. To be honest, they're fun. And that's really the bottom line when it comes to practicing these types of things. Yes, those are there to develop different senses of touch, timing, lightness, pressures, and all that type of thing. And it really will increase your hand intelligence to play with moves in that way, developing a different sense of how to manipulate this object. But also it should be fun. It really should be fun, and I love acquiring new moves and thinking about them. It's also very important to realize there is a difference between a move that you're using for fun and play and one that might actually be practically useful. There's an opportunity cost if you spend too much time focusing on things that aren't really useful at all. So I'm always trying to weigh up that balance between moves that I think are giving me something, moves that are just fun, and moves that are practical. And all of these ones I think have got some combination of practical uses, but also developing a sense of touch and timing that is very useful to have in the hands. And yeah, playing with some of these is definitely going to develop that hand intelligence to allow you to do even more amazing things. But yeah, I had fun. Hope you did too.